Hey guys, this is Nate with the Rapscallion Brigade, and we're going to look at some VR stuff today, namely one thing. And this is something that caught my eye. Now it's been around a while. You see the date on the article there, June 13th, 2017. And from the first time I saw this, I was amazed that it existed, but also really bothered by the fact that we don't have it over here. And it makes me want to take a trip to Tokyo. I've been to Tokyo, but it's been years ago, and that was long before the VR really got going, and before they had anything like this over there. And I kind of want to go back now just for Mario Kart VR. You see the title of the article, Mario Kart VR is real. And here's your first look. Of course, like I said, this was forever ago, and it's old news if you're looking for the latest and greatest news headlines. This has been around a while, but I just thought it'd be something we could talk about today, and just take a look at how amazing it is, and talk about the fact that I want it. And not only do I want it in an arcade over here, I would love to have a way to play it on the Switch. And I don't think we're probably going to get that. I don't foresee Nintendo jumping off into VR, especially with their new announcement about the Labo stuff. I feel like they're going to go in a completely different direction. And honestly, I'm fine with that. I understand the Switch doesn't have quite the horsepower that some of the other systems do, and you really need that CPU power and GPU power to be able to do VR correctly. So I understand, they're going to stay in their little niche. And honestly, the Switch is probably my favorite system right now. Even though I love my VR, I'm playing a lot of Switch, and I'll keep playing it. But if we can't get it on the Switch, Nintendo, let's bring it over here to some arcades, because I will travel to play this game. And my preference would be if you could set it up where you have a room with maybe 8 people, all sitting next to each other, racing karts in VR. I would enjoy this more than going to the tracks that you can go to. You go to Destin or places like that, and they have the arcade centers. Pigeon Forge has one where it has a huge go-kart track, and you can get on the karts and race around. I would do this. I would pay for Mario Kart VR before I would drive an actual go-kart on the track. And maybe that's just the gamer in me, or the VR addict in me, but I want this in our country so bad. And like I said, I may be traveling to Tokyo pretty soon. If I had a way to do it and the money and the time to do it, I would be there last week. But Mario Kart VR is real. And said, here's your first look. And of course, there's a video there. I've got another video that we're going to watch and talk about a little bit. But there's an official version of Mario Kart in virtual reality. But it's only heading to a Tokyo arcade for now. Again, that's horrible. That sucks. I want it here. Mario Kart Arcade GP VR, long name, is a newly announced entry in the Namco-developed series of Mario Kart arcade games. And he says, as the name may suggest, the new title makes the jump to VR, allowing players to race and throw shells at each other in virtual reality. Again, this is amazing. It's everything I've ever wanted. And when virtual reality really became viable as a legitimate platform, it was no longer, and I think right now, I know it's going to continue to get better. We're already looking at wireless headsets, and that's going to completely change the game again. And as resolutions get higher, as we get true 4K headsets, and I've mentioned before, a lot of the VR videos or 360 videos, if they ever get to where those are 4K, that's going to be amazing. Right now they're a little grainy, but VR is only going to continue to get better. But it's amazing that it's come to this point. And I've mentioned before that even a game with more cartoony graphics or lower resolutions, if it's done right, it's just as immersive as anything else, as anything that would be photorealistic. And that's kind of the way I envision the Mario Kart VR to be. Even though it's completely cartoony, it's in the style of Mario Kart. I would imagine it would be completely immersive, especially sitting in the little cart here in the arcade and being able to physically throw shells at the other racers. I can't imagine how fun that is. And it says, of course, that Mario Kart Arcade GP VR will run off an HTC Vive headset with players controlling the action in Mario Kart style arcade chairs. That tells me that we'll probably be able to get a version of this on the PC. Now, it won't be officially licensed or anything, but I have a version of Mario Kart Arcade GP that I can play on my PC in the Dolphin emulator, and this seems like something that could be done fairly easily, especially if you own a Vive headset. Now, I personally, when I'm on the PC, I have to run my PSVR headset with Trinus PSVR, and it does the trick. It's probably not as high quality as the Vive, but I can technically play the games. So there's that. So it says that they have arcade chairs, built-in steering wheels for driving, and motion controller wristbands to allow you to actually throw items at your opponents. See, this sounds perfect. And it says Mario Kart VR is heading to Bandai Namco's new VR Zone arcade in Shinjuku, Tokyo. I know that these are popping up more and more around the world. I haven't seen a lot of them in my area, but I mean, I'm in a fairly rural area, and the closest cities even don't have the VR arcades. I have better VR technology than any of the arcades around me, so that's nice, but kind of sad too, because I see things like this, and I really want to be able to go and do things like this. And unfortunately, I have to travel for quite a ways to do it. But this is amazing. Let's look at this video. I know they had a video on the site where that article was, but I marked this other video, and you just get a sense right away of how awesome this will be. Just sitting at the starting line, you can look around and see the other racers. You have your hand there where you can throw the shells and other things at some of the racers. All right, start. Here we go. It looks like there's a fairly good sense of speed too. The racing games that I've played on the PSVR, sometimes they kind of slow things down so to keep you from getting sick. But I know Dirt VR is fairly fast, but this looks like it's got a pretty good sense of speed. You can see the track kind of whizzing by, and I mean, it's Mario Kart. I always talk about the sense of scale in VR. Can you imagine driving into those plants like that and seeing the waterfall there? All of this, and it looks amazing just watching it on the screen, but I can only imagine what it would be like to be in that headset. Like I said, it just makes me want to go to Tokyo today. That looks so fun. And how great would it be to have a room full of 8 players, everybody on the track. It would be amazing if you could have this set up in your house. Or you could somehow do local multiplayer. If VR comes to the point where it's cheap enough that you could do LAN parties in VR, that would be amazing. It would help me out because I wouldn't have to rely on the internet connection. That's so cool. I would love nothing more than to be giving you a review of Mario Kart VR right now, but I don't have a way to play it. Maybe someday. This makes me think of something else that is happening in various places around the world, and that is you hear about some of these different VR arcades, but there are complete VR experiences where you are even in a warehouse, and the warehouse is a physical space with physical corridors and corners to lean around, and it's basically a shooter atmosphere. But even though you're in a physical space, it's almost a virtual reality, augmented reality, where you're literally in an actual space, but you're playing a game in virtual reality, and it's set up almost like a futuristic laser tag. I don't know how many of you remember laser tag, but that was a big deal back in the day. But now it's moved on. Now it's virtual reality shooters, and that kind of deathmatch style play, and it's fun to play a shooter in VR, and especially with the PSVR aim controller. It's really fun. It's really immersive, but you're still standing still. You're still pushing a joystick. If you go to one of these places that is basically a warehouse that's been configured specifically for that, and you're literally walking around the space, and there's sensors and trackers on every corner and on the ceiling, and everywhere you walk, you're being tracked through the space, and there's no disconnect whatsoever in your movement and what you're seeing on screen because you're the one walking around. That's the ideal setup for something like that. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to just listen to me ramble on for just a second about Mario Kart VR and how I lament the fact that we don't have it here in the States. I want it. Either that or I want to travel to Tokyo. What do you think about Mario Kart VR? Do you see this as being as awesome as I do, or you say, yeah, it's Mario Kart. There's other things that would be better in VR, or how far would you travel to do something like this? How much would you pay to play this in the arcade, to have a single race? I'm interested in maybe the logistics of what a trip to the arcade for Mario Kart VR would be like. Anyway, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me just ramble on about Mario Kart VR and some VR stuff in general. And we'll hope to bring you more videos very soon. Thanks.